Hello and welcome to Property Question Time with me, Gemma Forte. This is the show where you get to ask your questions, all property related of course, to a trio of industry experts, and today is no exception. So first up, I've got Nicole Bremner, who is the founder of East 8. And then we've got Garrett O'Hanlon, the director of MAP. And last but not least, welcome along to Kate Davies, who is a standards officer with the Equity Release Council. So welcome one and all. I've got some great questions that have come in for you, and I'm going to start, if I may, with you, Nicole. So this one will probably be right up your street, actually. Somebody wants to know, when buying kitchen and bathroom fittings for rental properties, what is best, El Cheapo or quality? It's actually a serious question because the costs are so varied. And can your expert recommend any brands best suited for tenants? Well, you're a massive property developer, so you're the perfect person to ask. What's your advice?
Well, it comes down to the property. What is the property like? If it's a more expensive property, if we're talking a couple £1,000,000, even if it is for residential, for rental, then you want to put a really quality fitting in that particular.
Yeah, people would expect.
They would expect probably a German appliance, Siemens or a Miele, for example. If it's a lower end rental property, then you could get away with a lesser quality or a lesser expensive brand. However, you do need to be worried about the quality and the warranty, the manufacturer's warranty that comes with that. Because remember, with tenants, often there is a lot of wear and tear on that particular product, and you do need to make sure that it has a good warranty. So if there are any issues with the particular appliance, then you have got some recourse there against those damages.
So I know that you deal with quite high-end properties, but moving away from that, just in your experience, if you were doing a much more sort of basic kind of flat, for instance, in that case, if you were going, kitchen, bathroom, would you just go straight down to IKEA or wherever, or would you look at getting more mid-range, like your magnets, or I know you probably can't specify a brand exactly, but what would you do in that instance? I've
used both of those actually, and if you're using an IKEA kitchen or bathroom, then it makes sense to put the IKEA provided appliance within that because they just fit with all the dimensions. If you're using a Magnet, then Magnet have their own appliances. I think they use Smeg, for example, as one of their suppliers, and it makes sense then to use the ones that work with their cabinetry. It just fits so much better, and it's just going to save you a lot of angst and potential DIY.
Yeah, well, I remember in a flat that I rented, in fact, it wasn't a flat, it was a 3-bed house with me and my kids. I'm lying. But in the kitchen, there was a very, very, very old fridge freezer. Really old. I mean, it was so old, it was a bit useless. And eventually, at some point, it just packed up. And sure enough, they sent someone around to try and fix it. And he was like, there is no point. And then she said, fine, I'll get you a new fridge freezer. It's kind of a basic thing you expect when you're paying a lot of rent. And this fridge freezer turned up, and it was about the cheapest fridge freezer I've ever seen. It was really small for the space. It was too small really to fit fish fingers and a bit of ice cream and some sausages in the freezer. And I just thought, that is so stingy. And what occurred to me is that landlord owns that then. It is theirs, isn't it? So it's a bit scrimping.
Yeah, it just makes sense to create the goodwill and the good feel with your tenant and put in a really quality one that is actually fit for purpose. If you've got a 3-bedroom property, you need a fridge that accommodates a 3-person, at least 3 people within that property.
What's for dinner, Mum? An ice cube and 3 peas. That's all I can get in there.
I've got to say, from my perspective, rental properties you go into that are well presented tend to be better maintained, I think. If you go for the kind of shabby average end, people treat it as a shabby average end, I think, don't they?
Yeah, that's a good, it can be a good indication, but there's good and bad tenants all up and down the spectrum, unfortunately.
Yeah. What, really, even in the high-end properties?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I also find there's a lot of kitchen companies. I think Magnet's one of them, but you've also got your Howdens and you've got your Benchmarks. And then if you've got a builder, which you probably all know, lots of people, they get a really good discount, don't they?
They do, yes. And you should ask your tradesperson to pass on that discount to you because it is quite significant.
Can make quite.
And if you are a landlord, then make sure you have an account with Howdens or Magnet. and
Because
make
so
sure
can
you get that.
landlords get accounts with them too?
They can, yes. If you're doing
that's
enough properties, then you can. Also, if you are a member of any of the landlord associations, I think there are a couple out there, you also get a discount on a number of kitchen companies or bathroom companies as well.
And just because I would like to know this, when a property developer such as yourself has sort of been doing it for so long, do you just kind of have your stock thing that you know works? So you almost go, I put that kitchen in for it, worked absolutely fine, 3 of them
Definitely.
please. Yeah,
Definitely.
And you just know if
Yeah.
people like it.
We buy hundreds of kitchens at a time, all the same for our rental, for our lower end functional rental properties, and then we've just bought a dozen very high end Italian kitchens with Italian appliances for our high end £1 million plus projects. So
Yeah.
yes, we do buy in bulk,
Yeah.
and we just standardise it all, because then the tradespeople we work with know how to
fit them.
fit those, and it's
Yeah.
all very easy.
So it's so different, isn't it, to someone like me going, oh, I like those handles for about 2 days. And I go, oh, I quite like that. Yeah, no time for that.
No time.
But does it even come down to tiles and things like that? You just go,
Absolutely.
those tiles from there and that carpet from there and that. And yeah.
Every rental property that we do looks exactly the same. It has the exact same tiles,
look and
wooden
your
floors.
stamp. Okay.
Exactly. And it just works for us.
Yeah.
And we've got it down to a very, it's just systemised.
Yeah.
It's efficient.
But these are refurbs, presumably, rather than new builds, by the sound of it.
A lot of them are permitted development
Right.
flats that we do, or they can be built from the ground up, or they could be refurbs as well. But we tend to fit them out in a very similar way.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right, Garrett. Somebody here says, my mortgage application went in on Monday. On Wednesday, I went to view the house again to be told by the lender that the house had been surveyed the day before, on the Tuesday. He'd had the call on the Monday asking him to be at the house to let them in. He wasn't sure who'd done it, and annoyingly, I haven't been able to get in touch with my broker since. So I haven't been able to check. This can only have been the mortgage company, I presume. Is it usual to instruct a valuation survey the same day the application goes in and have it done the next day? They don't even have my bank statements yet.
It's more of a lender question, really. A few issues on that. There's no such thing as a valuation survey per se. It's either a valuation or it's a survey.
Right.
It does sound as if that's a valuation for the lender. So as it's for them, they will instruct as they see fit.
It's very quick.
It is very quick, but then they're all kind of chasing each other on delivery now. They want the mortgages out quickly, and I would say they're lucky in a sense that somebody visited the property anyway, because increasingly we're going towards AVMs where nobody's going to visit the property at all. So it could be done from a desktop with an algorithm that calculates the approximate value of the property, which if it's within a ballpark, that's all the lenders really care about. So I think you can't have everything. In a sense, if you want your mortgage to proceed quickly, you've got to give the lender the opportunity to do that. And as it is their valuation, not yours, then they will control it, yeah.
See, I'd be pleased. I like a bit of haste. I don't know why.
Haste could be good. I think also it depends how they've wrapped up the way and who's paying for this, because often these mortgages come with an administration fee, so they might argue you get a free valuation and you're not paying for it, and it is theirs anyway. So in a sense, it's nothing to do with you, but of course the admin fee will, in a sense, go towards that.
But they shouldn't panic. It's not that weird. There's not huge alarm bells going off.
I don't think it's that weird at all, and usually the problem's the reverse, where people are saying, we'd like this to hurry up a bit, when are we going to get this done? So it's an unusual one.
Okay, thank you. Right, Kate, over to you. So this person says, how is the mortgage market regulated, and who can I go to if I have any problems?
Is this the whole of the mortgage market or specifically equity release? In fact, it comes down to the same thing, because although equity release loans, lifetime mortgages as they're called, are separate from mainstream mortgages that you and I might have at the moment, they are all regulated by the same financial services regulator, called the Financial Conduct Authority.
Okay, so there is a body of
There is a body.
regulators.
The lifetime mortgages have been regulated along with mainstream mortgages since 2004.
It's actually not that long, is it?
It's not that long, but it's easy for people to think that before that there was no regulation of mortgages.
Yeah.
It's not quite that simple. There were a number of rules and regulations and some very complex legislation. Difficult to go into the history of all that. There was also a voluntary industry mortgage code from 1997, but the actual rules that are now in place came in 2004, and that's codified or put the rules around what effectively was already happening in a lot of places. So it's not as if there was a sudden introduction of lots of new things in 2004.
Yeah, okay.
So if you have a complaint, the first port of call is always to go to your lender, not least because they're the most likely people to be able to sort it out for you, but also because they have a responsibility under those rules to look at the complaint for you and to have a chance to put things right. If they don't do that within a specified time frame, and it's about 8 weeks, then you have the right to take your complaint to the Ombudsman, the Financial Services Ombudsman, or FOS as we call it.
Yeah, yeah.
And FOS have the powers to investigate the complaint and to tell the lender if they think they've done something wrong and should pay you some redress. They don't always find in favour of the complainant. They may say, well, we understand that you're not happy about what happened, but in fact we don't think the lender's done anything wrong, so we're not going to make any kind of award against the lender in those circumstances. And that is for customers, that's often the end of the case. If you are really still unhappy with what the Ombudsman said, you have got the right to go to court. But the Ombudsman is free to you as a customer, which is why it's so popular. And if you wanted to go to court, then you would have to start shelling out money for lawyers and the like. And in effect, if an Ombudsman has not upheld your complaint, it's not very likely that a court is going to find in your favour either, to be honest, because the Ombudsman will already have looked at all the arguments.
Okay. Quite reassuring though, so thank you. So the basic message there is, yes, it is regulated, and yes, there are people that you can go to if you've got any problems, and they're free. So thank you so much for that. Right, that is already part 1 of Property Question Time done, but we'll be back for part 2 very shortly. Hello and welcome back to Property Question Time with me, Gemma Forte, and my 3 guests who today are Nicole Bremner, Garrett O'Hanlon and Kate Davies. Okay, on this show what we like to do is get some golden nuggets, that's what we call them, and they're wonderful little pieces of advice or wisdom or just a tip. Garrett, I'm looking at you. Have you got one for me?
Yes, it's really to do with photographs in terms of people undertaking surveys and providing or not providing photographs on a survey. It's always been a slightly tricky issue because my view is that legally you're not entitled to produce photographs of people's houses without their written permission. Now, I know there are lots of surveyors that do that, and in my opinion they shouldn't be doing that legally, and in fact with the new data protection legislation which is coming in next year, this is going to be even more of an issue. That said, the old cliche about a picture in 1,000 words is very true, and certainly we take on average anywhere between 150 and 500 photographs when we do a survey, depending on the size of the property, which we retain.
Yeah.
It's invaluable for lots of reasons which I won't go into now.
Show guess them when you come round.
Yeah, here's the damn course. That's always a good one. But it would be nice to be able to offer those to people, but you have to go through the correct channels. And as I say, I hope there's a resolution to this with the Data Protection Act. And I don't think putting 1 or 2 pictures of the front and the rear elevation in a report serves any purpose. And I don't think showing pictures of a crack here or there serves any purpose. But the whole property presented with that many photographs through, we use Dropbox for example, through that kind of facility could be very useful.
Yeah.
But with this data protection issue, you've got to be very careful.
Okay, that's interesting. You can't really ask a house permission, can you? Do you mind being in this photograph?
Well, no, you can ask the owner's
You can
permission.
ask the owners,
I mean,
yeah.
if you were receiving a survey, would you like to see 150 photographs of that property alongside that survey? I think yes.
Yeah.
Some would be irrelevant. I mean,
it depends, I guess, like, because I bought a real project and they took so many photographs and you kind of needed them really, so you could, you know, refer to it, show your builder, or just make sure that it wasn't going to fall down, things like that.
I mean, I had a case just this week where I went to a property which I'd been to in April this year, and there were cracks which had appeared during that period. So I could actually go back to those photographs and confirm that.
And that's proof.
Of themselves, they didn't look at this moment particularly serious, but when you consider they've appeared in the space of 6 months, then they are significant.
Right, okay.
So,
Particularly with a party wall issue, I would say that it would be essential to have photos, because how else can you judge what damage has been done? Obviously you will do the measurements of various cracks, but what if it's something like a garden, and this is what my garden used to look like, and now this is what it looks like post-work?
I've just had that done. I'm having a party wall. I've got a party wall agreement with the hotel next door to me, and the surveyor came in and took lots, and he was in there for about 3 hours taking photographs.
Did you
for
photobomb
for his
them?
own report? For his own reports, so you can see. So when they get going with the pile drivers and the screwdrivers, and the screwdriver has come through my kitchen wall, I can say that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
And one of the other big things at the moment, which we've spoken about before, is Japanese knotweed, which is ridiculously over-demonised. It is not a problem at all. However, if the vendor of a property chooses to cut it all away the day before the surveyor gets there, then it's not there. So you need those photographs for that kind of thing as well.
Yes. Okay, yeah, I totally see your point. Right, moving on to some questions. Kate, somebody here says, I hear there are likely to be rate rises soon. Well, yes, and what might that mean to my mortgage? My mortgage is a fixed rate and it's got 3 years left to run.
If it's got 3 years left to run, nothing will happen to it for 3 years if you hang on to it. Yes, everyone is talking about rate rises probably going up, but we've had the most extraordinary situation where they haven't gone up for something like 9 years. There'll be a whole generation of kids
They've gone down
who don't think rate rises ever will change. They will. There's only one way, and that is up.
Yeah, because they're at just nothing pretty much now.
What we're not expecting is very dramatic increases, although who knows in a post-Brexit world. I don't think we're going to go back to the old days, which some of us can remember when rates went up to about 18%. It's just inconceivable now. But no, for someone who's on a fixed rate now, there will be no change when the rate goes up. It will only be affected at such time as that fixed rate comes to an end. If we're talking about equity release mortgages or lifetime mortgages, which some people now have, the rate is fixed for the entire period of the loan.
Right.
And there is no fixed time period for that loan, because the whole purpose of taking that kind of loan out is that you take it out until you die or have to move into long-term care. It's a much more open-ended agreement, which is why the initial rate is higher than a so-called mainstream mortgage.
Right.
But interest rates
What's the
would not
initial
have any
rate
immediate.
then, roughly, on that?
Oh, typically at the moment, you put me on the spot there, certainly sub 5%.
Okay, yeah.
A lot less.
Which again, when I remember mortgage rates being about 7.5, 8, and yeah, the thing is, what that reflects, doesn't it, is that people have to borrow so much more now to get something that years ago would have cost that. So you have to borrow so much more, so you can't afford the interest because wages are the same.
Yeah, that's right. Or
Or
in real
nearly.
terms have
Yeah.
actually
Gone
declined.
down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what
I
happens.
think you need to protect as much as you can as well, because it's the biggest kind of business decision, which is not a business decision that people ever make. And so if you can protect your rate for a period of years, that's good. You can't protect your job generally, so if you can protect the payments, through, and I'm not a broker, but through some kind of payment protection insurance, I think that's probably the best options that you can follow.
Yeah, yeah. I think everyone's a bit nervy at the moment.
Yeah.
Generally, aren't they? But we'll see what happens.
So the other thing I would say is when you're coming to the end of a fixed term rate, although your contract will say you will then revert to the lender's standard variable rate, which may look quite expensive, in reality most lenders will write to you in the last 6 months before you come to the end of your 3-year fix, whatever it is, and offer you
a better deal. Yeah.
well, not necessarily a better deal, but a better deal than the standard variable, because they want to keep you as a customer. It's more expensive acquiring new customers. They will always prefer to try to maintain people on their books.
So at that point, so you're just sending them money, so it's in their interest to keep it, I suppose. Right, thank you. Okay, so one for you, Nicole. If I'm looking to renovate a home that I'm buying before moving in, well, you've got to buy it before you move in. Am I best to employ tradesmen, a company, or do it myself? I can do basic decorating and probably could do everything except the plumbing and the electrics. I'm not sure about that word probably. But I have to weigh up the cost of professionals on whether they're worth it.
Yeah, it all comes down to time and budget, because doing it yourself, and I know from experience, my father built our own homes while working full-time as a nurse. So I know that it took a long time. We were living on building sites for years. However, it was the only way they could afford to do it, and that saved them a lot of money. So it does, if you can do all these trades, that's brilliant. But perhaps employ someone to oversee the trades, perhaps employ a builder who can oversee all the trades, and you can just work alongside the builder on the trades that you're comfortable and confident doing. And that way you're saving a bit of money and you're doing it doing what you can yourself with the watchful eye of an expert, it will save a lot of money, but it will take a lot of time. The quickest is to get a company in who will quote, who will undertake all the works. That's hopefully the quickest, assuming that there are no issues. Then the next one is to employ a tradesperson who will do bit by bit, and then the absolute cheapest is you doing it yourself, but that takes time. So I would suggest working alongside someone.
You would have to be very careful if you were ever thinking of renting out that property, because you'd have to make sure that the gas and the electricity was always done by someone with the right professional qualifications, so that you get the right certification.
You have to have the proper building regulations sign off at every stage, and so by working with a proper builder, they will be able to advise you on at what point in time the building's regulations. But also the local authorities have very good building regulations within the local authorities, and you can just pay it's quite a small fee actually, and they will come out and they will stage check all of your build, no matter what it is. Yeah. They won't do the corgi, the electrics, the gas, that sort of thing, but they will come out and check any of the building regulations of what you're actually doing.
So I personally think if you're not sure 100% about your plumbing and electric skills, it might be best to get somebody else. I don't want to name any names, but I do know a couple where he thinks he's very, very good at DIY and she's not so convinced. And every time they have a project on their house, he wants to undertake it himself. And then there's usually a bit of a marathon going on because things don't go quite according to plan.
No, it's very different.
It's very stressful.
To rewiring.
Or laying down tiles on a path. Or
Can I just say, as a surveyor, the biggest disaster areas we see are the DIY. Not all of them, some people are very good at it, and some people call in professionals at the right time. But that whole regulation compliance thing that you mentioned is critical, and finish gives it all away.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. So perhaps do all the things that you know you can do, but just save the stress. Although plumbers cost a lot, don't they? My goodness, I was surprised by how much my plumber cost.
Surgeons are expensive too, but I wouldn't do that myself either.
Now this is very true, Garrett, and hairdressers as well. I've tried that one.
I don't use hairdressers.
Yeah, that's probably not so relevant for you, but it really is for me. And on that note, if you do undertake lots of DIY yourself and it goes wrong or really right, we'd love to see some pictures. Okay, thank you so much for watching this episode of Property Question Time. My name's Gemma Forte and my guests have been Nicole Bremner, the founder of East 8, Garrett O'Hanlon, the director of MAP, and Kate Davies, the Standards Officer from the Equity Release Council. Thank you so much, all of you. And if you've got any questions that you'd like our experts here at Property TV to answer, then you can email us info@property-tv.co.uk. Do check out our website, and you can download our app for free. There's no escape. See you soon.